Entrepreneurs do three things. They birth the new in a simple way. That is to say, that every type of innovation has largely come from people thinking innovatively. And most of them come from firms that are created to bring forth this new technology that the inventor-entrepreneur thought up. The second thing they do is even much more important, and that is when new firms are started to create jobs. This is actually quite apparent, but economists and policymakers and politicians don't get this. You know, if you're running General Electric or General Motors, your stockholders want higher productivity. They want more product for less expense. It's a simple equation. It's the amount of product divided by the number of people who work in the company. And if you're the president of one of these companies, your job is to drive that number on the denominator down. You want fewer people. Well, if you start a brand new company and you're going to make something, you're going to deliver a service or a product, you got to have people. So you don't want more employees than necessary, but without employees you've got nothing, so new firms hire. In fact, the statistics from the Kauffman Foundation tell us that new firms are the place where all new hiring occurs, the net job creation. And it's not a small number. On average, new firms in the United States create about 3 million jobs a year. And in fact, at the margin, that is where all the jobs that are created in the economy that are new, it's new firms that do it. Put differently, the United States, unlike a lot of countries, has a growing population, has a growing labor force. We need 3 million brand new jobs every year. So if everybody else kept their job, with the entry of young people, with the coming of immigrants, with people returning to the labor force, we need 3 million brand new jobs every year. And those jobs, almost all of them, come in firms that are less than 5 years old. Now the third thing that entrepreneurs do with their companies is they create all the new net wealth in the society. So if we didn't have new companies, the society would gradually grow, in relative terms, poorer. And we think about entrepreneurs as actually sometimes becoming very rich. We have in mind Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or Sergey Brin. And these guys get very, very wealthy. But in fact, the real wealth goes into the society. It's estimated that people who start these firms take a fraction, in some cases less than 1%, of all the new net wealth that their companies generate for society. Think about what Bill Gates did with Microsoft. Now he made a fortune for himself, tens of billions of dollars. But in the process, he's made every one of us richer. In economic terms, we're all much better off. So these are all the things that entrepreneurs do. They push the new, they push the innovative, they make jobs for people, and they make wealth for society. America and the world, well, as long as humans walk this planet, need innovators, need inventors, and need entrepreneurs.
Hi, I'm Justin Avery Anderson. I grew up poor and then I invented moist granola. My company, Anderson Trail, makes the original premium moist granola. A lot of my time is spent on the phone with customers and trying to build our business, but my favorite part of the job is getting to go into stores and promote the product. Good stuff. Well, do you want to try? You want to taste another one?
Yeah, I'll taste the peanut butter.
Sure.
I bought the blueberry one.
I started it when I was a 16-year-old with braces and broke a bracket off one of my teeth after eating some of the crunchy stuff. Now you can find Anderson Trail in stores like Whole Foods, online at Amazon.com, and I've been on the Home Shopping Network. I was raised by my mom and my grandparents in Houston. We didn't grow up with that much money. I was always looking for ways that I could contribute to the family. When I was a kid, I had my own lemonade stand. I would set up a booth in front of our house and I would sell glasses of lemonade for 10 cents a glass. That showed me early on that it was possible to set up shop and make some success as long as I put a lot of hard work into it. Hi, would you like to try some Anderson Trail granola? I make it.
Yeah, I'll try it. You made it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I first tried soft granola when I was on a vacation with my best friend and his mom. It was on the drive back home to Houston that his mom said if somebody was to sell something like this, that they would be rich. Those words really stuck with me. I experimented around in my mom's kitchen to try to recreate that recipe that I had tried on that vacation. And after about 10 tries or so and spilling thousands of oats on the ground, I finally found the perfect recipe. My first test market were friends in my Boy Scout troop. I had brought a big bag of my granola on a Boy Scout camp out on a Friday night. It was intended to be eaten on Saturday morning for breakfast, but by Saturday, it was all gone. The original has almonds and pecans, and the peanut butter graham cracker has toffee-covered peanuts. You want to try the other two?
Let me try the original.
Okay. During my senior year of high school, I won a scholarship from the Horatio Alger Association. Horatio Alger was the name of an author who wrote about people who came from nothing and went straight to the top of their industries, the American dream. You like it? Awesome. 5 years ago, I got into my first store right before I graduated from high school. A year and a half later, I got my first investor. Now that I'm out of school, I've been able to realize the full potential of where I can take Anderson Trail. It's been a lot of hard work, and I've definitely had to make some sacrifices to get Anderson Trail where it is today. But the most rewarding part is being able to see such a small spark of an idea become a reality and thrive after 6 years. Here you go.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. I'm really excited that our first quarter earnings for this year have surpassed what we made in all of last year. Along the way, I've made mistakes, but I've been able to learn from them and share those lessons with my employees. The journey is the most important part to me. I'm Justin Avery Anderson, and I am Free Enterprise.
How's everyone doing today? So I thought I'd start off with a really quick question. How might an element, whether oxygen, carbon, or hydrogen, look like if it were standing right in front of you? What would it, pretty small, yeah. What would it be wearing? What would its life be like? You know, would it be happy, sad, tall, short? What would it do for fun? When I look at the periodic table, I see 118 different elements and 118 different adventures to share, stories to tell, and characters to create. For many students across the globe, the periodic table is just another table, and that needs to change. How do we go about exploring this entire world in a way that gets kids excited about learning science and chemistry? So I started to think about this question in middle school and came up with an idea that I call Elementio. And in Elementio, we give personalities to the different elements. So your oxygen becomes an oxygen life giver, a wizard. Your sodium becomes a sodium dragon. And your helium becomes a helium genie. Let me show you what I mean. This is sodium dragon. When we were short of soap, vapor lamps, or salt, a messenger would be sent to sodium dragon's cave. And now a tweet is enough. So we're taking the properties of elements and we're giving them a face, right? We're giving them a personality and a character through both a small story and an illustration. And you can notice the sodium vapor lamps that are in the background. This is Phosphorus Phoenix, who, if you notice, is carrying a strand of DNA in her beak instead of carrying twigs, and is getting ready to flap her fiery wings whenever anyone decides to strike a match. Or one of my most favorite characters, Chlorine Troll, that wades in dirty waters, but himself carries a big, big stench. He's a crazy guy. And in the Elementio game, these elements can interact with properties. So, you know, your oxygen can rust metals. Your copper can conduct electricity and shock cards around him. Your helium, because of its light weight, can take cards and then move them forward. And the goal of the game is to cross the battlefield and reduce your opponent's electrons to 0. So, how did it start? Well, it started with something very simple. This was the very, very first Oxygen Life Giver card that I made back in 6th grade. And it started with Google Images, PowerPoint, and just a whole lot of fun. And I mean, like, when I was earlier in elementary school, I would play a whole bunch of games with my parents. And there was a point at which they were just like, you know, dude, They didn't say dude, but dude, where's the learning in all of this? And I was like, you know what, that's right. Let's see if we can create a game that combines both the fun and learning. And that's where this journey, really began. And the coolest thing about being a kid growing up right now is how easy it is to develop, prototype, and make something new. I remember hand-drawing cards, putting them on PowerPoint, and then running to FedEx Kinko's like 12 hours before a conference to get the first deck of the cards printed. And I would do this every few months. So it moved slowly to actually me starting to hand draw some of these cards. And this is the same Oxygen Life Giver, but this is how it looked like when I was in 7th grade. And for me, that was actually a really tough year. I was diagnosed with a very rare lung disease that led to bleeding and hemorrhage in my lungs. And I remember my lung capacity was cut to 50%, and I missed 5 months of school and lost some 20 pounds of weight. And I would remember waking up in the mornings, and this was going on, on the side, and I would remember waking up in the mornings feeling as if I had already finished running a marathon, because I was just incredibly tired. And but the times like those that make you realize how much your heart and mind work, even when your body does not. And I would get up in the morning, and I would drag myself to the desk, and then element by element, try to bring the periodic table to life. And I kept going. And this is how the final Oxygen Life Giver card actually looks like today. And it looks very similar back in 8th grade. The cool thing is the illustrations, though. These are made from artists all across the world. We have guys in Michigan and Argentina and now in Indonesia. And how I met those artists is a separate story. But as the saying goes, on the internet, no one knows you're a dog or a kid. Especially if you have a PayPal account. So we got this thing going, and we got 5,000 games manufactured from a factory in Texas, and then got shipped to our garage. And then Amazon decided to take some of the games to their warehouse. They started to sell by word of mouth. And I started high school life began. And then a year back, I started to work on the next version of the game. And this is actually, as the first version sold out. And this is just to show you how the new version looks like with the box and the cards and being able to play with all of the elements. So I think what I've learned from all of this is that you're never too young to make a difference or to create something new. For me, the periodic table isn't just another table. It's a place where the elements come to life. Thank you.
You first start going into your school and selling different items that you loved?
Well, first of all, I knew that I needed a way to make money. I was 13, I was thinking about a car. I didn't want to be stuck in a position where, I would be 15, turning 16, couldn't afford a car. Even things like going and hanging out at the mall and shopping with my friends and things. I just wanted a way to make extra money. And I was really passionate about these fashion rings because they were so trendy, and I was like a little fashionista. I loved keeping up on all the trends. So I found out that I could personally communicate with manufacturers and both in China and in the US, but the cool thing is that they didn't know my age, so that was never a barrier because it was always online. So, I acted like I was just like everyone else, and they started sending me samples, and, I just kind of fell in love with the selling of products, and I fell in love with the direct sales industry, and the products that they offered. And, for the longest time, I did want to become like a Mary Kay representative or sell Stella and Dot, but I couldn't do that because in order to sign one of those contracts, you had to be at least 18. So I knew it wouldn't work for me. And so I went out and created that for myself.
So why, okay, first of all, let's stop, because I embarrassingly admitted I don't know much about direct sales and what it is and that type of the entire industry. So tell us a little bit, for those who are watching, what direct sales is.
Direct sales is the companies that aren't actually selling from a corporate platform. Say when you go to Saks Fifth Avenue or Nordstrom's, it's companies like Mary Kay, Stella and Dot, Amway, the companies where there are people just like you that are having parties that are social selling on the ground floor of the company and actually turning it into an income for themselves. If it weren't for my mom, Utoria would not exist right now. Simply put, I tell a lot of people I come from a very rural area. When I say rural, I mean very rural. My high school actually only has about 350 kids in it when I did go to public high school. So the mentality around here is oftentimes, you go to high school, you try to get into a good college, you try to get a good job, and, sometimes those things don't work out for you, and that's okay. You can, go work at McDonald's or, do any of those types of things. I'm not saying that's wrong, but, that's normally how the cycle goes here. And no one even really thinks about starting a business. There are a few business owners in our area, but a lot of times they own multiple businesses and have a sort of monopoly in the small town I live in. So it's not really common knowledge to be able to go out and start your own business, even in the small local area, let alone on a national level. So my mom never held me back. Like I said, my first business was at 4 or 5 years old. And at the time, my mom helped me make my business cards. She helped me set up my little stand and, put some decorations out and things to make it festive and fun to invite people in. And she taught me these things along the way. And, at 6 and 7 years old, I was talking contracts, and my parents owned companies. So I would be like, I'm going to dock your pay because you're sitting around. So it was just simple things like that, where my mom was constantly teaching me how things worked in the business, and I constantly wanted to learn more. Like, it was like a sponge for me.
Tori, why don't you tell us about those obstacles that you had to overcome to start your business, if you don't mind?
I actually had to overcome a lot of obstacles when I started my business, but not just when I started my business, but in my personal life too. When I was 18 months old, my father passed away from a really tragic accident. And then 6 months later, I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. Gosh. So my mom never let me, think of myself as handicapped or, let me mope around just because, I was a girl without a dad. She always taught me to keep going, and, I was perfectly capable, and, my life wasn't going to end just because these things happen. So I was always kind of trained into that mindset, to just keep pushing forward. And, later when I became passionate about entrepreneurship, which actually happened pretty early for me, I would say 4 or 5 years old, I started my first company, which was selling candy at my grandma's open air flea market. But pretty early on, when I became passionate about entrepreneurship, I learned how to use these things to my advantage rather than, kind of be scared about them and not want to talk about them and let them hold me back. So I had to overcome those obstacles personally as a child, but then when starting my business, there were a lot of different obstacles I had to face, like, not being old enough to sign my name on a bank account and not being able to get a loan and, just different things of being, 14 years old and trying to start a direct sales company. But each challenge, you see it, you face it, you figure it out, and you keep moving forward, and that's just kind of how I've faced everything.